I am pleased to announce that we have won our appeal on the Cristian Roldan red card, and he will be eligible to play this weekend. As part of that, I want to be very clear to say that I also appreciate and respect the job that the referees did during the game. I think that they have a very difficult job. I think that the call that they made on the field was understandable. By the letter of the law, Cristian did make contact with the face of Atuesta, and I also understand why a VAR review would also uphold that decision on the field. So when the independent review panel, which is a group of 4 people, gets a chance to sit down and we give them a bunch of materials submitted and we can show them all the camera angles and they have unlimited time, they were able to deliberate and eventually reach a different conclusion. But it's really important to us to say as a club, and for me personally, to Ted Uncle and Hilario Grajeda individually, we think you did a good job. We think you officiated a good game. We understand the call on the field, and we continue to be supportive of the system, and we continue to support VAR, and we think it's the right means going forward.
Open up the questions. Go ahead, guys.
It's so good.
I usually put you guys to sleep, but it usually takes longer than like one answer. Like, okay, nothing else. All right.
The other bit of news, I guess, is Alfonso Ocampo-Chavez being signed today.
Oh yeah,
What
that's
was
him.
what was there a driving force behind that? It didn't seem like. I mean, go ahead.
Yes, we also signed Alfonso Ocampo-Chavez today. We're super excited about that, and that was a process that was a long time coming. Alfonso's been with us for a couple of years. Certainly had a good tournament in the GA Cup, but we're not signing any of these kids on the basis of 1 week or 1 game or 1 result. He's been a mainstay in the Under-17 World Cup team. There was the thought once we made the decision to sign Alfonso that if we were going to do that, we might be better served to do it before qualifying, just to make it, to let it be known. I think there's a lot of weight that's put behind how many of these kids are pros and full-time pros, and I think he was deserving of that ahead of that camp. Going into CONCACAF qualifying, knowing that he's a pro, along with Danny Leyva, and that they were on equal footing, because I think those kids are going to be cornerstones of this team, and potentially of the World Cup success of the United States going forward, and that's certainly an honor and a privilege, and I think that's good for the Sounders to be part of that, and it's certainly good for Alfonso in terms of a recognition of how far he's come and the success he's had. And now he's going to compete against a couple guys that have done okay, Raul Ruiz-Diaz and Will Bruin. And suffice to say, if we're standing up here in a couple years talking about how he's beaten Will Bruin for scoring goals in this league, we'll all be happy campers. But there's a lot of work ahead.
How long is this deal for? This contract for?
It's broadly speaking 5 years. So there's some options in there similar to the structures we've had with the other guys. We're trying to keep it pretty consistent across these young guys and the deals we offer them.
Does injuries play a part at all?
Nope. No, none of these guys that we sign as teenagers are going to be a result of needs on the field, because candidly, this is not a solution for next week or, might he play? Sure. But the reality is, honestly, if we can leave him with the United States team to qualify for the World Cup, that's as important to Alfonso's development as whether or not we win this game on the weekend. So that's something that we have seasoned pros for, and that's what we want to do. And then as these kids come back, we'll reintegrate them and get them up to speed. And then, when they're good enough, they'll be ready, and we'll put them in.
Is this about rewarding a player who's put in some good performances and you see a future in, or is there a practical part of it that if another team comes calling for a player like this, there's a difference between him being on the MLS roster and him being on the Defiance roster, because presumably you already controlled that aspect of it?
Yes, we controlled, but yes, I think in any league in the world, if you're signed to a first division club as opposed to a second division club, then you're going to command a higher market value if it comes to that. But I want to be clear too, Jeremiah, that we're not signing any of these players, from a purely asset-based perspective. Certainly, if it ultimately at some point in their career benefits them to go abroad and it benefits the club and it's a win-win, those are things we'll look at and explore. But we are signing Alfonso because we think he's a tremendous young man, we think he's a tremendous talent, and we think he's somebody that can help the Sounders.
Garth, what did you see in him when you say he's got talent? What are some of his attributes that you saw in him that make him special?
I think he's been here for 2 years, so the high-profile games that probably are in the collective conscience are the way he played in the run to the national championship last year and the form he displayed in the GA Cup. And so those things are online, and you can watch the video and you can make your own opinion. But I think if you watch him, his movements on the ball and the ease with which he's able to move around people, on our team, Henwala Bwana is a very good one-on-one dribbler. Alfonso has a similar quality in terms of how he can kind of glide in and out. And when you think that he's 17 years old, there's a ton of potential yet to come. And look, some of this is just, can we put him in training every day with Raul Ruiz-Diaz and Will Bruin and learn his craft from some really good pros, and then see what happens, because a lot of our development is, I think somebody, Jeremiah, you might have written about this, and a couple of you guys probably have. It's not that the Sounders didn't produce players before. I mean, DeAndre Yedlin, Jordan Morris, those are two of the better players, youth players produced in the last decade. It's that we wanted to systematize it, and we wanted to see if we could speed it up. And so whereas Roldan debuted at 19 and Yedlin debuted, I think, at 19 or 20, and Jordan debuted with the national team at 19, can we get these kids in now at 15, 16, 17, get them with the pros, get them with top-level instructors like Gonzalo Pineda, Jimmy Traore, Preki, Tommy Dutra, and now speed up their development and push this thing forward, because if we can shorten the cycle by even a year or two, that's going to make our team better, and that's critical as the league gets better, because we're still limited by, we only have 8 foreign spots. You've seen the college draft has diminished in importance over the last couple of years because everyone is signing the best players to homegrown contracts out of high school. There will always be exceptions, but hopefully our team is going to be good enough year in, year out, where we're picking in the 20s. There just isn't that much there, and so we have to find a different way to supplement the rest of our roster and build out the bottom of our roster. And what we want to do is have younger, more talented players with more potential, because we think that'll ultimately benefit our club in the long term.
What did you see in his finishing ability? When you talk about potential, what did you see there that you liked?
He scored some goals, Miles. I mean, I don't want to overthink it. As a goalkeeper, it looked like he could get one around me. So, it's probably a low bar at this stage. But no, he's scored a lot of goals, and he scored a lot of goals at every level, and he scored in different scenarios with the national team, with his club team, with our club team. So that's the kind of variety you like to see. But again, he's got to come up now and prove it at a different level, right? He hasn't played a ton of minutes at Defiance. He hasn't played a ton of minutes against 27, 30-year-old defenders, and he's going to have to learn how to do that. And again, I think he's got two potentially really good mentors in Raul and Will, and to a lesser degree Jordan. And I say lesser only because I think Jordan's going to play more out wide, and Alfonso's probably going to be more central. But you know what? Even as I'll qualify that and say, as Alfonso breaks in, I wouldn't pigeonhole him just as a 9, even if maybe that's where we think he'll wind up. I do think you could see him come in on the wings for minutes and time here and there, just because that skill set of being able to run at players is something that we don't have a ton of in our team right now, and is something that could help us potentially in games this season.
So he'll continue to develop and get most of his play time at Tacoma Defiance.
Yes,
right?
absolutely. Yep, and that's the plan for Danny Leyva, and that's the plan for a lot of these kids. We still have 2 open roster spots in our under 24 age roster, and so there's still opportunity for more of these kids to come up. But when we sign them, it's not an indication that we're going to put them in the next week. If we do, that's a coincidence. But we're looking at, can they play a bunch of games at Defiance? Can we start to get better results at Defiance and be competitive every week, and then hopefully put them in a position to succeed when they are with the first team on a more full-time basis. I say full-time, but they'll be training here every day. You guys will see them now every day with the first team once they come back from qualifying.
Speaking of open roster spots, the winter transfer window is closing next week. Do you anticipate making any moves? And did the recent injury situation change your thinking?
Nah, you guys have figured me out by now. I don't change plans very easily, and when we're third best in the league, we got some guys dinged up, and that's going to happen. And in June, we're going to miss some guys for call-ups, and our team will look a little bit more stretched then. And what I'll say is, I thought Jordy Delem was good. I thought Harry Shipp was good. I thought Henwala Bwana was good. I think Nuhu's been good. So we came in and said, we got a deep team. We got a great starting 11, and maybe those guys. And Roman Torres, I just left out. Roman Torres was very good the last game. So we felt really confident in our top 16 to 18 players, and I think you saw that. And, although maybe you look at last week and say, hey, 2 points out of the week with 2 home games, it doesn't look great going in. if you look at the circumstances of how it went down, I actually think there's a lot to take out of it. And I think one of the most encouraging things is the roles that those depth guys played. I didn't mention Will Bruin. There's a sixth guy even that I think made really solid contributions off the bench over the first month or so of the season. So we're happy with that group. We think we can upgrade the bottom of the roster. Are we looking, Mickey? Yeah, we're always looking. And we have the ability to add a spot or two. Could it come now? Sure. I mean, if the right deal falls into place, we got a week. Could it come in the summer? It might. But I do think we will add. It's just not going to get pushed into a bad deal or a hasty deal or a wrong deal based on somebody missing an extra week because they got a bum hamstring.
Did you appeal Kelvin's at all?
We did not. We
Why?
did not. I think that one was more clear by the letter of the law. That was, again, certainly an understandable decision by the referee. They checked it on VAR. They changed their decision on VAR, which tells me that there was a clear and obvious opinion as to what happened. And so that one was one where, looking at all this stuff, you want to take your best chance. And we thought that we had the best chance to win Christians because we sincerely felt that he didn't deliberately hit Atuesta. And whenever the independent review panel reviews, they have to find, as a matter of law, of the laws of the game, that there is a violation, right? And it's tough to argue on Kelvin's play that there wasn't a violation. I mean, he is the last offender. The guy is going to goal. He pulls him down. Like you can argue the details of the dog show maybe, but I think that it's a reasonable call. And again, we thought the Roldan call was a reasonable call on the field as well. We just felt like it really wasn't deliberate. It's really hard for a referee to determine an intent in real time, but this panel, given more time, could review that and look at all the different angles and really dig into it, and ultimately they were willing to side with us and then reach a different outcome.
Are you limited at all on how many you can appeal? Or?
We are limited in by the number of quote-unquote frivolous appeals. So if you make an appeal and you lose, and the committee deems it to be without merit, emotional and no basis in the laws, etc., then you can be fined $25,000, and you can only make 2 of those per year. And so it is important that the appeal be credible. That's another reason why we wouldn't appeal the Leardom. The point of the system is to appeal red cards that you think truly you have a sincere disagreement on the ultimate outcome, even if you understand the call on the field. So that's what we did with Cristian.
So has the fine to Cristian been rescinded as well?
The fine for the red card, yes, but the fine for leaving the field, no, because it was found on the video. And again, this is a very reasonable decision that Cristian was correctly. I know there's confusion on the broadcast, but Cristian was correctly awarded the red card by Ted Uncle on the field, and then Cristian stuck around to have a polite conversation. I don't think it was confrontational on his part, but by the laws of the game, when you're shown the red card, the reaction is to walk off the field and leave, and that's not what happened, and that's why Cristian got fined. And again, that's a reasonable finding from our perspective.
I'm new. How much is that fine?
$250.
Going back to the U17s, just what did you make of that GA Cup run, and I guess specifically the competition they were playing against? I mean, that was a pretty impressive roster of teams that they ended up taking down.
Yeah, no, look, that tournament's a wonderful accomplishment. It's a high point for our youth development so far, and I've told this story on the radio last night. It was a great reminder of what pro sports is. We put 4 years of effort into specifically starting with that group to push it up, and I think we've become one of the lead academies in MLS now as a result of those years of effort and diligence on the part of Mark Nichols and Chris Little and tons of other people along the way. And so that was really, really cool. And then 3 hours later, we got smashed 4-0 at Defiance, and then 12 hours after that, we got smashed 4-1 by LAFC. And so it's a wonderful thing to note your progress, but you got to understand that you're not even on the mountain yet. Like, maybe you're at base camp, but you got to climb the mountain yet. And look, if you look at Dallas and you look at Red Bull and you look at RSL, and they have half a dozen of these kids starting for their team, they are farther along than we are. And so that is the challenge for us now, is we're gradually matriculating them into the first team, and then we will gradually introduce them into the first team. But I still think it's going to take a couple of years. And again, that's okay. These kids are really young. When you're talking about 15-year-olds, 17 years old, you need to build them up with confidence. You need to bring them in slowly. And the good news is, when you have a really good team like we believe we have, then you can do that, and you can afford to introduce them over time. And so really proud of the 17s. Good milepost. A lot of work to do.
Leiva's brought in from South Vegas and Alfonso's brought in from Merced. What do their signings say about the club's youth scouting?
It's one of the things we did. We got resources from ownership. And I went in after my first year here and said, hey, we really need to spend more in this area and we need to create some infrastructure around this. And that's what we did. We went in and we established homestay programs, we established affiliate programs, and we hired a full-time academy scout just to identify players for these teams. And all of those efforts, again, I think have culminated over years of work into now being able to recruit from an area. We started, we wanted to go broader than Seattle and go to all of Washington, and now we're really all over the country and specifically into the West Coast. So those are areas, Vegas and the interior of California, where I think you can find lots of players, and we probably will continue to scout there.
How do you balance the maybe lack of success that Defiance has had, but with prioritizing the development that its players have had? How do you balance that?
No, look, this is the same argument in reverse, right? I think we have the GA Cup success we have for a lot of reasons. Winning the national title, playing the UDAN tournament, going abroad and winning those tournaments. But it's also because those kids have gotten minutes at Defiance. And they've gotten pushed around by men, and they've gotten smacked down a little bit and said, all right, we got to be better than this. So there's going to be a very patient approach at Defiance. No one is saying that we're going to compete for the title this year. Do I hope we can make it a little bit more competitive and still maybe approach that goal that we stated at the beginning to compete for the playoffs? Yeah, but you know what? The paramount goal is still do what's best for these kids. Introduce them, give them minutes, give them the ability to compete. And then we believe over time, even if we lose every game for the rest of the year at Defiance, I think next year will be better. And I think the year after that will be better than that. And we're doing this slow build, and that's what we're working on, and we'll continue to stay the course on that path.
On the ESPN broadcast, it was mentioned that Brad Smith's agent was in town to talk about his future, I guess, with you. Is there any light you can shed on the situation with Brad Smith and if there's any talks about him staying beyond June or whenever the loan ends?
I think Brad's done really well for us. When players do well for us, we like it when they stay. So, yes, that's something we consider, Jeremiah. It's an astute analysis on your part. I'm teasing Jeremiah. Yes, we've talked about extending, but this is one of those. When the player's on loan, it's out of your control. You have to deal with Bournemouth. You have to deal with the player. You have to deal with the player's agent. I did meet with Brad's agent at the game, and it's a work in progress, and we'll see what Bournemouth says about it, and we'll see what is possible and what is not, and we'll go from there. I think the good news is we would like Brad to stay. I think Brad would like to stay, but again, he's not our player. He's just a player on loan, and up until July 31st, under the current agreement, Bournemouth have the right to take him back or to sell him to another club. So that's the situation we're in, and I think all sides would prefer to have it resolved sooner than later. But again, we have on paper 3 months to tackle that, and I wouldn't be shocked if it didn't get resolved this week.